Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am the Darklight Emissary, and today's episode continues our discussions on Legion doctrines and tactics of each of the Space Marine legions during the Great Crusade era. And today's legion is the 5th Legion, the White Scars Legion. Known for their lightning-fast assaults and unmatched skill on the battlefield, the White Scars were feared and respected by their allies and enemies alike. The White Scars Legion's battle doctrines and strategies were heavily influenced by their nomadic origins on the steppes of their homeworld of Chagoris. Their tactics were centered around speed, maneuverability, and surprise, which allowed them to strike deep into enemy territory and disrupt their lines of communication and supply. One of the key doctrines of the White Scars was the use of decentralized command and control. Unlike other legions that relied on a centralized chain of command, the White Scars operated in small, independent units most of the time that could adapt to changing circumstances on the battlefield. This allowed them to take advantage of opportunities as they arose and exploit weaknesses in enemies' defenses. Another important element of the White Scars battle doctrines was their use of hit-and-run attacks. Their jet bikes and other fast-moving vehicles allowed them to strike quickly and then withdraw before the enemy could mount a counterattack, and this was one of the legions that used jet bikes the most, I'd say, out of nearly any legion at all. When they did engage in direct combat, the White Scars relied on a combination of ranged and melee attacks to overwhelm their opponents. Their expert marksmanship and lightning-fast reflexes made them deadly with ranged weapons like bolters and plasma guns, while their skill with swords and other close combat weapons made them fearsome opponents in hand-to-hand combat as well. In larger battles, the White Scars often deployed in assault formations, using their speed and maneuverability to bypass any fortifications and strike at vulnerable targets like artillery emplacements and command centers. This allowed them to quickly seize key objectives and disrupt the enemy's plans before they could get off the ground. However, the White Scars were not invincible. In situations where they were outnumbered or outgunned, they relied on their skill and cunning to turn the tide of battle, and they were one of the most fierce close-range combatants. If you did manage to hold them in position, they were still not going to just fail simply because they couldn't use their preferred speed tactics. They used terrain and cover to their advantage, and often employed feints and diversionary tactics to draw the enemy into a trap. Though, through these tactics, the White Scars were able to win many battles against overwhelming odds and secure victory for the Imperium on a number of occasions during the Great Crusade. The White Scars Legion's battle doctrines and strategies were a testament to their skill and adaptability on the battlefield. Though the White Scars were renowned for their speed and daring, they were also known for their loyalty and honor. They fought not just for the glory of the Imperium, but for the bonds of brotherhood that united them as Space Marines. Their courage and sacrifice would be remembered long after the Great Crusade was over, and their legacy would inspire future generations of this legion as a chapter, as well as any of its founding chapters later on. For the White Scars Legion, the battle was never truly over. They lived and died by their creed: to hunt, to kill, to win, and they did so with a ferocity and grace that was unmatched in the galaxy, compared to many other brother legions during the Great Crusade. Though they were kind of known for being somewhat savage in appearance and also in ferocity, they were sometimes compared with the Space Wolves Legion, which they actually frankly despised, the notion that they were somehow savage like the Space Wolves kind of were. The White Scars were much more of a kind of a quiet professional type of legion. That being said, they were also told to enjoy combat, to laugh while fighting. Many of their great leaders, like their first captain Jubal Khan, were known to basically kind of be laughing or enjoying themselves during combat, but fighting with a grace that belied the, comparably savage way that the Space Wolves fought and other groups like the World Eaters. The White Scars kind of tempered that with a nobility and a professionalism that some of the other legions lacked. And this in part came from their Primarch, Jagate Khan, who was probably one of the wisest Primarchs in a lot of ways. He actually pretty much disagreed with the Emperor on mostly everything, from the way he was ruling his empire to how he was even running the Great Crusade, I believe. However, he thought that what the Emperor was doing was better than the alternative, which is humanity failing or dying. So he chose to go along with it and, teach his legion what he thought was correct in both on the battlefield and off the battlefield tactics and creeds. Notably, that one thing that was misunderstood about this legion is that they tended to reflect a lot of the customs from their homeworld of Chagoris, where ritual scarring and things like that were kept up within the legion itself, as well as several of the most advanced weaponry that they used were basically looked kind of like your stylized samurai type of blades, and they would actually give their blades names, and they would stay with a warrior until death and then be bequeathed to a new warrior that took that one's place. And these blades were all made by these really ancient and handed down artisans on Chagoris. So they would ritually create these blades that would then be offered up to the legion itself. And so in that way they had a connection to their homeworld that some of the other legions somewhat kind of forsook their homeworlds, but the White Scars had a deep connection to their homeworld. And through that connection came some of their tactics, like their massed cavalry style attacks come from that world, and how they would fight combat on the steppes of that world, where it was actual cavalry combat, and replace that with the jet bikes that we see. And this legion made great use of those tactics, with the Great Khan himself, Jagade Khan, often leading those charges as a spear point into mass enemy formations. This was a legion that thought highly of their psychers. They had some pretty powerful librarians, such as, and I apologize if I butcher this name, but Targutai Yasugi. He was the chief librarian of the White Scars during the Great Crusade era and into the Horus Heresy era. He was a very powerful psyker, possibly close in power to someone like Ahriman of the Thousand Suns, as well as many other chief librarians of that era. But the White Scars tended to temper their warp usage with some of their spiritual beliefs from their homeworld, kind of like the Space Wolves in that regard. However, the White Scars were not under any illusion that they were not sorcerers like the Space Wolves, a major difference there. And because of that major difference, this legion shared actually a pretty close relationship with Magnus the Red and the Thousand Suns. Many looked upon the White Scars as a bit of a alien legion, and that was the same treatment that often the Magnus the Red got, along with his legion of psychers. And so they shared a pretty tight bond over those reasons, and just because both also tended to respect more tempered forms of fighting, as well as just kind of choosing their own paths instead of just adhering to, by the book battle tactics and, a blind loyalty to the Emperor, I suppose. Being one of the fastest legions, this legion often tended to not really have as many Terminator squads or dreadnoughts and other heavy armor type of things. They did have tanks, but they tended to kind of disfavor using those where possible, and they had a much higher amount than any other legion of bike squads and land speeder type of gear in their armories. They tended to just use regular power armor as their main choice of armor. However, if you ever look at some of the artwork for the White Scars, which you'll see during this video a bit of, they tended to spend some artistic quality on their armor. They did seem to embellish it a fair bit compared to some of their brother legions. If you pay attention to some of their artwork, you can see some more detailed livery on some of their armor sets. Usually the more veteran warriors will have a bit more artisanal quality to their armor, with things like Chagoran runes and things engraved into their armor sets. Going along with their propensity for using the jet bikes that were mentioned earlier, one of their main strategies is known as the Scarblade Strike Force, which is basically meant to pierce the heart and deliver a death blow to their enemy. However, this is not necessarily a tactic that just punches straight through the center in front of an enemy line. Each warrior has the autonomy to basically kind of make their own movement decisions in this formation so that, they aren't running into each other. They aren't simply blindly, dying for just honor's sake or anything like that. They kind of end up flowing around and encircling enemies in this way, kind of becoming a river of a force that is very hard to track and to, drag down into an actual all-out fight. One other differentiator for what the White Scars preferred was they actually preferred the Thunderhawk gunship for transport because it was smaller and faster over the Stormbird, which was more commonly favored and used by most legions during the Great Crusade. The White Scars were one of the fastest adopters of the Thunderhawk. And then, along with that, their space capabilities were not exactly the most powerful of any of the legions. However, one of the key differences to White Scar ships is they were often modified to be much faster than their counterparts. They could kick up an afterburner type effect and speed ahead and around enemies' ships much faster than would be expected from the same class of ship in another legion. And this was very apparent on Jagadecon's flagship. His Gloriana class battleship was probably the fastest of the biggest ship class that the Space Marine legions were given during this era. One of the most unique traits of this legion being speed. Everything was oriented around how fast that they could, get on you and attack you and then be out before you even knew they were there. And this carries through as a main theme for this legion and even up to their successor chapters as well. And so this has been a bit about each of the legion tactics and strategies for the White Scars Legion. As always, please leave a comment if you'd like to discuss anything on the video or request something new. Leave a like or subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. Still quite a few of you out there have been watching but have not subscribed. I would really appreciate your vote of support to making this channel and community grow that much more in a noticeable way. I appreciate all of you taking the time, though, to just simply watch this content. I enjoy making it for each of you to, have a place to see some of this unmitigated by, too many jokes and things like that. Although those things have their place, I believe, as well. However, I just want you to have the direct information here as much as possible. As always, bring your light into the dark places, and I will see you in the next video where we talk about the 4th Legion, which is the Iron Warriors Legion. Iron within and iron without. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for your time, and we will see each other again very soon.